All right, here we go. I put a lot of time into this. This is going to be the number one defense in the NFL, all right? I put a lot of time into this because my draft strategy, my fantasy draft strategy is going to be to jump in front of everyone, take my personal number one defense, keep them all year, and get about plus 10 against my opponent every week on my defense alone, all right? Because I think this defense is going to put up crazy numbers, all right? Not only for fantasy am I doing this, but also each week I wouldn't mind betting on the number one lockdown defense in the NFL against whoever, right? Good news is this team also has pretty good offense, but they have the number one defense, and I'll take that any game. All right, so with that being said, the number one defense in the NFL is the Houston Texans. All right, so I got the Houston Texans as the number one defense in the NFL. Let's go into why. All right, so I'm going to break this down. I'm going to break down the roster, the whole defense, all right? The number one defense, in my opinion, because my plan is to bank on them all year, all right? My plan is to take them before everyone in my fantasy draft, and my plan is to bet on them as much as I can because I'll take the number one defense in every game, all right, just about, because they also have really good offense. The Texans got to be up there towards the top with the Bengals. With that being said, I'm going to jump right into it, okay? All right, here we go. At the top, with the 2023 first round pick, third overall, in his third season, the 2023 Defensive Rookie of the Year, Will Anderson Jr., Alabama, 6'4", 243. He's 23 years old. He's one of the top pass rushers in the NFL, all right? He was third in the NFL as far as pass rushers go, okay, in sacks, all right? He had the third most sacks in the NFL at 23 years old, okay? All right, so moving down to the rest of the defensive line, all right? They have a really good defensive line. All right, Mario Edwards Jr., he's a 31-year-old vet. He's a big dog, second-round pick in 2015 from Florida State, all right? 31 years old, he's a vet, all right? Sheldon Rankins, moving down the list. Sheldon Rankins, 31-year-old vet. He's the big dog, the real big dog, clogging up the middle. 6'2", 305 pounds, first-round pick, 12th overall. Back in 2016, Sheldon Rankins, all right? And on the other side, Daniel Hunter, big-time pass rusher, 6'5", 263, LSU, another veteran, 30 years old. He came from the Vikings last year after 8 seasons and had 12 sacks in year 1 with the Texans, all right? That's 7th in the NFL for Daniel Hunter, all right? At 3 in the NFL, Will Anderson Jr., all right? And at 7, Daniel Hunter. All right, I got my notepad here, all right, guys? It's pretty serious because, like I said, I'm banking on them all year, okay? All year. So I took some notes, did some research, and yeah, we're moving down the list, all right? All right, here we go. So yeah, guys, that's 3 veterans in their 30s, along with a 23-year-old, one of the best pass rushers in the league. That's a solid defensive line right there. Very solid. With a pass rusher. That's key to have that pass rusher, all right? In his 3rd year, all right? In his 3rd year, his 2nd year, he was 3rd in the NFL in sacks. That's a big deal. All right. Their head coach, here's a big note to jump in here with, guys. Their head coach, DeMeco Ryans, big-time defensive coordinator for the 49ers. He used to be a defensive coordinator for the 49ers, but he's a big-time defensive coach, all right? All right, moving on to the linebackers. We got Henry Toto and Christian Harris, all right? Those guys, both solid, both from Alabama, all right? Both solid, young Alabama linebackers, all right? In the middle, one of my favorite linebackers, used to be a 49er, Azeez El-Shaair, all right? Undrafted, all right? Undrafted into the NFL. He's a devout Muslim. I love his story. He used to be homeless, all right? This guy is a beast. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. All right. Locking up the middle, Azeez El-Shaair. He has a presence in the middle of the field. Undrafted. All right. I'm big on the high draft picks, but undrafted, chip on his shoulder, I'll take him. I'll take him. All right. Here we go. Defensive backs. One of the best in the league. Derek Stingley Jr. So they got him in 2023. Will Anderson Jr. in 2022. Derek Stingley Jr., all right? 1 year prior, LSU. Again, 3rd overall pick in the 1st round, this time from LSU, okay? Alabama, LSU, all right? He's rushing you into throwing it to him, all right? One of the few lockdown cornerbacks in the NFL. He made All-Pro first team last year with Patrick Surtain II from the Denver Broncos, all right? This means All-Pro first team. There's only 2 corners on that. Marlon Humphrey was a nickel corner, slot corner on the All-Pro team, but Patrick Surtain and Derek Stingley Jr. are the 2 best corners in the NFL. All NFL first team. All right, so one side is locked down. All right, one side is locked down, Derek Stingley Jr. Pro Bowler, young guy, all right, beast. All right, here we go. Safeties. We got Callan Bullock and C.J. Gardner-Johnson, all right? Callan Bullock, he's solid, young guy, 22 years old, 2nd-year player out of USC, 3rd-round pick, all right? So he's got a lot to prove. Jimmy Ward, all right, Jimmy Ward, he got into a little bit of trouble, all right, but he should be back this season. We'll see. Jimmy Ward used to be a 49er, 1st-round pick. He's a beast, but the young guy from USC should be pretty good himself. All right, here we go. C.J. Gardner-Johnson came over to this #1 defense this year from the Super Bowl champion Eagles. All right, so he believes in them. I believe in them. And he's a solid player. He was a solid player for the Eagles. He'll be a solid player for the Texans. All right, here we go. Other side, Kamari Lassiter, beast, Georgia, 22 years old, 2nd-round pick. Very young guy. He's locking down the other side, all right? So they got 2 lockdown corners, one of them being the best in the NFL. The other one's very good. I would hesitate throwing it to him, all right? They're going to have a lot of interceptions and probably a lot of interceptions for touchdowns, all right? And then last but not least, in the nickel, covering the slot, Jalen Petrie, 26-year-old veteran out of Baylor, 2nd-round pick, solid. He's not going to mess anything up, all right? Jalen Petrie, all right, 2nd-round pick, veteran, 26 years old. He should be just fine fitting in with this defense, all right? So that's the defense. That's the #1 defense. That's who I got. I love a defense with a great defensive line and a pass rusher, all right? We got some beast Alabama guys and just a monster playing with a chip on his shoulder right there, middle linebacker. We got lockdown corners. Should be very careful throwing into that, all right? Defensive coach, all right, that's my #1 defense, all right? And I think the offense does matter for putting together a good defense because you don't want the defense on the field the whole game. That's the problem with the Steelers, okay? Their offense, I don't believe in the Steelers' offense. So they're going to be on the field all the time, and they're just going to get tired, I think, the Steelers' defense. So that's what slides on to #2. Still great, but #2. All right? Texans, they have a really good offense. They got Joe Mixon, Nick Chubb. They got C.J. Stroud, so they won't be on the field too much, but when they are, I think they're going to play really, really well. For sure, top 10 defense, but I think they're #1. So that's who I'm taking, guys. Let me know who you guys got as your #1 NFL defense. But I feel pretty good about this one. I had to go into it in depth with the #1 just because that's who I'm getting. And we'll go into the rest of the defenses later. But that's who I got, all right? The Houston Texans. All right, let me know what you guys think. Have a good day. I'll see you soon. Peace.